Welcome back to Emma Olivia Stories, and if this is your first time here, remember to subscribe because some stories don't just unfold, they quietly unravel you from the inside, and this one began on a morning that felt deceptively ordinary, the kind of calm that settles over a house when routines have gone stale and silence becomes familiar. Because at 38, I had learned how to maintain appearances, how discipline, workouts, skincare, and consistency could preserve not just youth, but the illusion of control. And every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman time had treated kindly. A woman my husband Nathan used to admire out loud before his work swallowed most of his words, most of his presence, most of us. And that morning he had left early again, briefcase in hand, a quick kiss on the cheek. Already elsewhere, leaving me alone with the hum of the house and the freedom to exist without being observed. Which is why I let myself linger in the bathroom, letting warm water wash away thoughts I didn't want to name. Letting steam blur the edges of the life I was questioning. Moving slowly, deliberately, choosing red lingerie afterward, not for anyone else, but because it reminded me that I was still visible to myself, still capable of feeling powerful, and as I wiped the mirror clean and met my own reflection, I caught myself thinking that Nathan would have missed this version of me again, a realization that stung more than it should have, and I might have stayed there longer if the sudden sound of the door opening had snapped me back into the moment, because I had completely forgotten that Ethan was staying with us temporarily a long time. Family friend Nathan had offered help too during a difficult period. Someone whose presence still felt unfamiliar in a home that had grown used to emptiness. And when he accidentally stepped into the bathroom doorway, eyes immediately shifting away in embarrassment. Mumbling an apology, the moment lasted only seconds but landed with unexpected weight. Because embarrassment mixed with something else entirely, a charged awareness neither of us acknowledged. And even after he closed the door and the house returned to silence, my heart didn't slow the way it should have my thoughts. Replaying the brief eye contact, the vulnerability of being seen, and the unsettling realization that I hadn't hated it, a truth that followed me throughout the day as I tried to convince myself it meant nothing. That loneliness can distort perception. That desire can masquerade as validation, and yet the questions lingered quietly, especially when I considered how distant Nathan had become, how conversations had turned transactional, how affection had become something scheduled and often postponed. And when he mentioned a party that evening, I felt a flicker of hope, imagining a chance to reconnect, to feel chosen again. Only for that hope to dull when plans shifted, excuses surfaced, and I found myself dressing carefully, choosing red again, doing my makeup with intention, trying to remind my husband who I was, only to return home later alone, tipsy, disappointed. Peeling off layers of effort until I stood in black lace under harsh kitchen light, feeling foolish for having expected more. Reaching for a drink, not to celebrate, but to steady myself, the night stretching ahead heavy and quiet, until footsteps echoed, and I realized Ethan was back Unexpectedly, plans changed, flight cancelled, fate. Indifferent to my emotional state, and there he stood in the doorway, concern replacing surprise as he noticed my tears, my posture, the way exhaustion clung to me. And when he asked what was wrong, really asked, not out of politeness, but genuine care, something inside me cracked open, because it had been so long since anyone had looked at me like my feelings mattered. And as we talked, standing too close without meaning to, words spilling about loneliness, about feeling invisible in a marriage that still looked intact from the outside. His empathy felt grounding and dangerous at the same time. And when he told me I deserved to feel seen, that my sadness made sense, the line between comfort and connection blurred. But neither of us crossing it intentionally, yet both aware it existed, the tension unspoken but undeniable. And in a moment fueled by emotion rather than desire, I leaned in, not to betray, not to escape, but to feel anchored. And when that closeness startled us both into stillness, reality rushed back in all at once, guilt cutting through confusion. The reminder of vows, of trust, of the fragile balance we were about to disrupt, and before anything irreversible could happen. The front door opened and Nathan's voice filled the space, confusion turning to anger as he took in the scene before him. Misunderstanding blooming faster than explanation, his disappointment sharp and loud, accusations flying, hurt turning to blame, and no matter how much I wanted to explain that nothing had truly happened, that the damage was emotional before it was anything else, my silence spoke louder than words. Because sometimes the truth arrives too late to matter. And as Nathan demanded space, demanded answers I couldn't give in that moment. Ethan stepped back, respecting boundaries even as everything collapsed. And when the night finally settled into quiet again, I was left standing alone, stripped not just of clothes, but of certainty. Realizing that loneliness doesn't begin when someone leaves. It begins when you stop being seen. And as I sat there with regret heavy in my chest, I understood that the story wasn't about temptation or betrayal, but about neglect, about the quiet erosion of connection, about how easily emotional needs, left unmet, can pull us toward the edge of choices we never thought we'd face. And as dawn approached, I made myself a promise, not about forgiveness or endings, but about reclaiming myself, because whatever came next, I knew I could no longer disappear inside my own life.